We have a special guest, returning friend of the show, Dr. Robert Epstein is the senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology, a Harvard PhD, and a former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today. He's also an author, journalist, and has held positions at several universities, including Boston University and Harvard University. He also leads the Tech Watch Project. It's a pioneering initiative dedicated to uncovering and mitigating the covert influence of big tech on our behaviors, on our social narratives, and crucially, on our electoral process. Through his project, he's developed the world's first 24/7 online monitoring system, a tool designed to safeguard our elections and protect our children from the profound manipulations of companies like Google. Please welcome to the show, back to the show, Dr. Robert Epstein. How you doing, buddy?
I'm up and down. I would say I'm a little stressed.
A little stressed. Well, maybe this is why. We're going to show a little bit of your testimony. Last week you testified in front of Congress. And so let me play a little bit of that right now.
I'm here to tell you about an existential threat to our country that is so well hidden. I warn you, by the way, some of what might turn up on the screen in the next minute or two might be disturbing. I apologize in advance, but it's necessary that you see it. It's so well hidden that you might know nothing about it. It's a threat posed by big tech monopolies, eerily predicted by President Eisenhower in 1961. In 2016, Google alone shifted more than 2.6 million votes to Hillary Clinton, whom I supported, using subliminal techniques I had been studying and quantifying since 2013. 4 days later, a leaked video showed Google's leaders, devastated by Trump's win, telling their employees they would not allow Trump to win the presidency again. They would guarantee his defeat through their, quote, great strength and resources and reach. They made good on this promise in 2020, and in 2022, as I explained recently in the Epoch Times, they stopped the red wave cold. I lean left, but I don't think a private monopoly, one with no accountability to the public, should be able to pick our nation's leaders. Who knows how these secretive companies will lean next year, after all. After that all-hands meeting, Google perfected at least a dozen new methods of subliminal control that I have now been studying using rigorous scientific methods for more than a decade. To shift votes, we know from leaked emails that Google relies on what they call ephemeral experiences. Fleeting content such as search results, search suggestions, and up next videos on YouTube, content that impacts undecided voters and then disappears, leaving no paper trail. Since 2016, my dedicated team has been building increasingly more sophisticated monitoring systems that preserve and analyze ephemeral content. This is Google's worst nightmare because it means we are surveilling them just as they surveil us and our children 24 hours a day. In other words, we are giving you, our nation's leaders, the ammunition you need to finally hold Google and other tech companies accountable to the public. Our research, which we publish in prestigious peer-reviewed journals, allows us to measure the power big tech has to shift votes, while our monitoring systems let us see whether these manipulations are actually being used. In one case so far, we shared our data with Senators Lee, Johnson, and Cruz. They sent a strong letter to the CEO of Google, which ceased some of its election manipulations that very day.
Really?
It turned off the political bias in its search engine and stopped sending partisan go vote reminders on its homepage. Through our monitoring, we detected those changes the moment they were made. We preserve ephemeral content through the computers of a representative sample of real voters. One must monitor through the computers of real people because big tech sends out personalized content. To see what they're sending people, you must look over the shoulders of real people, just like the Nielsen company does with television viewers. Algorithms, my friends, I'm sorry to say, cannot be regulated. because they are inherently opaque, even to the programmers. And even if you did regulate, we still need to monitor to make sure there is compliance. We started small, but have deployed bigger systems with each election. In 2022, we preserved more than 2.5 million ephemeral experiences through the computers of more than 2,000 voters in 10 swing states. We are now building the world's first nationwide digital shield, and we just released a public dashboard. It's at americasdigitalshield.com. It's what you're seeing on your screen. And it shows our cumulative findings in real time as we are receiving the data. We are collecting and displaying data 24 hours a day through the computers of more than 13,000 voters in all 50 states, and so far we have court-admissible data in 15 states. We have thus far, the extreme political bias we are seeing in content being sent to voters, along with the highly sexualized and violent content being sent to America's kids, confirm my worst fears. The technological elite, as Eisenhower called them, are now in control of our democracy, and they are systematically indoctrinating our children. If we can secure funding to expand our system so we have court-admissible data in all 50 states, the tech companies will back down in 2024. And even if they don't, we will have incontrovertible evidence of election rigging on a massive scale. If no monitoring system is in place, Google alone will be able to shift between 6.4 and 25.5 million votes in the 2024 presidential election, leaving no paper trail and making a mockery of the free and fair election. Thank you for your attention and for protecting our great nation from threats, both foreign and, I hope, domestic.
Wow. So let me bring in Dr. Robert Epstein. That's some pretty powerful stuff. Now, I remember the last time you were on this show, it blew everybody's mind because you're really making the charge. You're really making the case that Google itself, Google, which is the most popular online search engine, is actually manipulating votes, and they're pushing certain information to people that changes their opinion on how to vote, and then they vote a certain way, and Google knows they're doing this. That's what you're saying.
There's no question about it. I mean, we know this from whistleblowers and from leaks from the company. So this is no longer guesswork on my part. This is the truth. And, you know, I haven't looked at that video, but I noticed I was being a little bit dramatic there. Let me tell you that this, it wouldn't matter how dramatic I was or am, because you cannot even begin to overestimate the importance of what this is about. It's the fact that it's invisible makes it 100 times worse. The fact that it's operating on such a huge scale, that's unprecedented. The fact that it's operating not just in the US, but affecting more than 5 billion people around the world, every country in the world except mainland China, which Google has also helped. This is very, very serious stuff. And sometimes when I get in front of a group and you know, I'm given enough time, I can scare the heck out of people. Then they walk out with their surveillance phones in their pocket that are literally listening to every single thing they do and tracking their location constantly and reporting what songs you're listening to on your phone and what you're reading on your phone. And I mean, they just walk out back into that world of extreme surveillance, extreme censorship, extreme manipulation, and they just carry on as if there's nothing to see here.
Well, I actually did see a news item this morning that Chrome, now Google's web browser is called Chrome, and there's a lawsuit right now that's proceeding in California that when you turn on your incognito searching, right, you're going to go, Google's really not turning on your incognito searching. In fact, Google is still tracking you and every website that you go to. That's according to this lawsuit. Were you aware of that also?
Right from the start. In fact, I even wrote about it when they introduced incognito, because we ran some tests and we found it's a complete fake.
Does it mean they're watching you incognito? Like they said they weren't.
Yes. So
they're incognito spying on you.
So do you think this is kind of why, might be one of the reasons Google used to have a motto, and their motto was "Do no evil"? They got rid of that. And would you consider what they're doing evil?
I'm not a big fan of the terms evil and good, because I guarantee you the folks at Google who actually know what's going on there, they think they're doing the right thing. They think they're doing a service to humanity. So, good, evil, whatever label you put on it, I'm telling you that it's much bigger and badder than you could possibly imagine. And by the way, when they do something like introduce incognito mode, whatever it is they do, and I'm telling you this without any exceptions, there are no exceptions to this rule. When they do something, buy something, announce something, it's to get them more data. So if they're introducing incognito mode, it's going to get them more data. If they buy the Nest thermostat company, which they did, it's going to get them more data, not just about the temperature in your house, but they started putting microphones into some of the Nest devices, and they put cameras in the devices. If they buy the Fitbit company, it's to get them. If they buy Google, YouTube, it's to get them more data. Whatever it is they're doing, it gets them more data, even if it looks like it's doing the opposite.
So now you've set up a website to counter the power of Google doing this, right? Yes. And so it's called, here it is, it's called Live, Andrew, it's called Live Ephemeral Experiences Captured, right? So is that?
No, it's called America's Digital Shield.
Okay, americasdigitalshield.com. And what I'd like to show, I'll show it in live. Let's show it right now in real time. Go ahead to the camera, whatever camera is that. So that is that website, and it says it's shining a light on big text, dark secret. Now, what am I seeing? Can you tell me what this is?
Well, that doesn't seem to be live, because if we're live, the numbers would be moving.
They are moving.
They are moving?
Yeah. Oh, you can't see. Oh, okay.
Oh.
But they are moving. It's right now. It's at 70,842,228, 9, 37, 38. So it's going up.
You don't have to read all the numbers over and over again, because the show would be so boring if you just did that from now until the end. But
okay, thanks for the tip.
Yeah,
getting show notes.
Yeah, but if you move, if what you're seeing are the number of ephemeral experiences we've captured on Google and other platforms, and it keeps going up because we are monitoring through a politically balanced group of more than 13,000, we call them field agents or watchdogs, in all 50 states. And we're looking over their shoulders with their permission, and we're capturing what's on their screens. So if they're getting, let's say, partisan register to vote reminders on Google's homepage, now think about that. That's a really nasty manipulation, but we're capturing it.
What does that mean, a partisan reminder? How could there be a partisan reminder? I thought a go reminder to vote is nonpartisan.
Oh, if they send it to everyone, but they don't send it to everyone.
Oh,
and there's no way to know that unless what? Unless you have a monitoring system in place. So, for example, in Florida, in the midterms, our data showed 100% of liberals were getting go vote reminders all day long on election day. 49% of conservatives were getting go vote reminders. That is a massive manipulation. Imagine doing that for months. Partisan register to vote reminders, partisan mail in your vote reminders.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you say that when you made them aware of this, now they stopped doing it. They really listened to you?
They did not listen to me. They listened to three U.S. senators who sent them a 2-page letter summarizing my data. And they literally that very day shut down some of the most horrendous manipulations they were using in Georgia. And this is in the months leading up to the Senate runoff elections in Georgia. And they literally just turned them off. We saw bias in Google search results go to 0. We had never seen that in 10 years. They literally turned off the bias.
So now how do you measure, how do you know a Google search result is biased?
Because we have algorithms, we have people who rate them, but the main thing we do is we use 3 nonpartisan organizations that rate the political bias of news sources, thousands of news sources, and they keep updating their ratings, and we take the mean of those 3 numbers. So we have multiple methods of measuring bias very objectively. And if you scroll down a bit, if someone has control over that page,
we'll do it. We'll do it right now. So you won't be able to see it, but the people at home will be able to see it. So go ahead, scroll down.
We'll skip over the pictures the kids are seeing because it is so disturbing. But just skip down to the graphs, and you'll see a bunch of graphs. And there's a lot of blue. There's lines.
Yes.
And then there's blue. Okay, there's no red. If there's red, that would be a point above the line. And that would mean conservative bias. If there's blue and it's below the line, that means liberal bias. What you're seeing is every single day, over and over again on Google.
And Bing.
Which is and Bing and Yahoo, you're seeing extreme liberal bias sufficient to shift tens of millions of votes because it can shift the votes of people who are undecided. When there's bias, it doesn't affect people who have strong opinions. It affects people who are trying to make up their mind. And so they go to what's ranking very high in the search results. They think that must be true. It must be objective. They click on that link. Boom, they end up on a web page that makes one candidate, the liberal, look much better than the other candidate. And we know from the controlled experiments we've been running for 11 years that can easily shift after one search between 20 and 80% of undecided voters.
No kidding. Wow.
And if you repeat that over and over again for weeks or months, the numbers get higher. And if you repeat that on different platforms, for example, you have that same bias on YouTube, which is suggesting what video you should watch next, then the numbers get even higher still.
Yeah, well, that's so I'm on YouTube. So somehow they have my show and they would figure out if I had a liberal bias or a conservative bias. And then that would put that into an algorithm. And then I would be suppressed. Correct?
Well, yeah, if they don't like your content,
they don't.
They're going to...
They don't. And
if they don't like your content, then you're suppressed. One of the leaks from Google, it's fantastic. It's a 2-minute video of the CEO of YouTube talking to her employees, and she's got a big screen behind her, and she's got a big up arrow and a big down arrow, and she's saying, we're elevating the content that we think is good, and we're demoting the content that we think is bad.
So I just had this long conversation about I've noticed certain things. So one of the way they suppress a content they don't like and channels they don't like is that they unsubscribe people who have subscribed to your channel.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
that's right.
And then for channels they like, they don't do that, right? So for instance,
correct.
There's a Democrat funded news show called The Young Turks, and it was funded by Jeffrey Katzenberg. You're familiar with
my
them.
wife used to love that show. It was her favorite show.
Me too. And then they sold out to the Democratic Party. They even sold out their subscriber list to the Democratic Party. And now my show, for instance, last month, my show got about 19 million views, and The Young Turks got about 7. They added 50,000 subscribers, whereas my show, which got more than double their views, added only 20,000 subscribers.
Right.
So that right there, I'm like, and the same thing was happening with Secular Talk, which is Kyle Kalinske, whose show went absolutely dead for 2 years after he lied about me. And his own viewers called him out. He didn't add a subscriber for 2 years. All of a sudden, Kyle Kalinske, off of horrible view counts, is adding 20,000 subscribers. So I got 19 million views.
His hair color.
He did change his hair color. I got 19 million views. He got about 6 or 7 million views, and he added 20,000 subscribers. I knew immediately that Young Turks and Kyle Kalinske had made some deal with the devil, and they were on some kind of better algorithm that was artificially boosting their channel. As far as subscribers, that's for sure. Because his content and the Young Turks content has only gotten worse, meaning less appealing to the people that they're trying to appeal to. Yet their subscriber count is through the roof, which makes absolutely no sense. And so my theory was that they had made some deal with some Democratic donor who said, hey, I can get you on the good. Well, I know the Young Turks did. They got $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's one of the biggest DNC donors. And so I was figuring Kyle Kalinske did something similar, made a deal that he would get on the good algorithm, which is exactly, I know for a fact is happening. I mean, I don't know for a fact that is happening, but as much as I can be sure. And now what you're telling me completely validates that. And so that would be Google and YouTube putting them on a better algorithm and boosting their content and boosting their subscriber count because they're pro what you would consider liberal, but I would call it, I don't think Democrats are liberal. I think they're authoritarian, and I think they're the bad kind of right wing. And so I just call it Democrat. I don't call the Democrats liberal because I'm a liberal. They're not. And they're for authoritarianism. They're for government mandated medical treatments. They're for every war. And liberals are supposed to be against that stuff. So they're just Democrats. So would you say that YouTube and Google actually boost Democrats' content over Republican content?
Let me just tell you, you're talking about these things as if they're hypothetical.
Okay. And, well, I think I have to. I think I have to, or else they'll take me down.
That's good to know before next week.
It means you don't understand what it is that my team and I do. We actually measure these things. You're talking about them as if they're hypothetical. They're not hypothetical. We measure them. They're real. These are real things affecting the thinking and behavior and attitudes and beliefs and purchases and votes of billions of people, and they're real. Every crazy deal you can imagine, every crazy manipulation you can imagine, it's real. It's not your imagination. Look. Let me make it really simple. Okay.
Okay.
You know how some things go viral and some things don't?
Yes.
And everyone thinks it's just like the lottery. You know, you just, some people get lucky and they win.
Right.
That doesn't work with algorithms. Virality, that's controlled by algorithms. Algorithms are controlled by people. They're written by people. They're modified by people. And anything that goes viral because those companies want it to go viral. Anything that doesn't go viral, that gets just like nothing, or that gets suppressed, it's because they want it suppressed. Now, do they pay attention to everything? No. But anything they pay attention to, they control what happens. So it's not chance. It's literally deliberate and systematic. And that's the situation in which we're all stuck at the moment, because there are no laws or regulations in place that put any restrictions on them whatsoever. They have the power of gods, and they exercise the power of gods. One of the leaks from Google, an 8-minute video called The Selfish Ledger, it's about Google's ability to re-engineer humanity. According to, this is right from the film, Google's values.
Wow. Now, let's remember Google's values include being in bed with partners with the CIA, the war machine, and what I would consider the most nefarious, evil entities ever known to man. You're not speaking in hypotheticals. You're speaking in hard data because you've actually measured this stuff, and you know what's going on. I'll give you one small example from my show. So, in the beginning of COVID, in the early summer 2021, we had Dr. Robert Malone on.
Sure.
And they suppressed that. So we sent that video to YouTube first. I go, hey, could you check this? I don't want to put it up on YouTube and then have you give me a strike saying that we are saying something we can't. And so they checked it and they said, no, it's all good. And you could have pushed me over with a feather. And I was like, really? It's all good? So we put it up. It got about 700,000 or 800,000 views, but you cannot find it. Like I've tried to find that video on YouTube. I've tried to go Jimmy Dore, Robert Malone. It doesn't come up. You have to almost trick the algorithm and you have to find the right. It's like trying to pick a lock to try to find that video. You can find it, but it is unbelievably hard to find. And it's one of the most popular videos that's ever been on my channel. It's very hard to find. So that's another way they do that. So they know about that video. So then going forward, I'd try to do a video with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about vaccines and COVID. And I sent it to them and I said, hey, could you make sure this is okay? And they said, no, we can't do that anymore. So apparently the guy who said they could do that got in trouble and he was told he can't do that anymore. And so this is my speculation. And so he said, no, we're not going to check your video before you put it up. I go, but you're going to check it after I put it up, right?
Yeah, when they get their orders.
And they go, yeah. And I go, well, why wouldn't you just they go, we don't have the manpower to check it before you put it up. But you're going to check it. You have the manpower to check it after I put it up, right? They go, yeah, we're going to check it after you put it up. So that's not that. That's them trying to have control over us so that that makes us, that's another way to suppress it. So we self-censor. So then I didn't put up the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. video. I only put it up on Rumble. I didn't put I think the first 1 or 2 interviews I did with him, I only put them up on Rumble. And so that's another way, right, that you could measure, correct?
The point is that we're capturing all the evidence. No one's ever captured the evidence before. We really are their worst nightmare because all what they use to manipulate, to influence, it's all ephemeral. It's ephemeral content. Ephemeral means short-lived. 2018, there was a leak of emails from Google to the Wall Street Journal, and Google employees were discussing how can we use, and again, I do my finger quotes, ephemeral experiences to change people's views about Trump's travel ban. Well, my head just spun when I saw that.
Really?
Because they actually used the term. I mean, I had been studying ephemeral experiences for years in my, research, and they actually use the term because they know that's where the power lies. Because ephemeral means it appears, it affects people, it disappears, it's gone forever, and it's not stored anywhere.
Wow. So
that's why nobody remembers anything ever.
Yeah. So you know what? I would like to get a hold of that video. Both those videos you mentioned already. The first one with the up and down arrows.
Yeah.
Where
I got it.
So can you send me a link to that or send me that video?
I can send you the link. It's a fantastic thing to watch because you're seeing the inside of the machine and how it really works. And I'm in touch with people, with whistleblowers from Google who haven't even blown the whistle yet. So I know so much that it's astonishing, frankly, that I'm still alive.
I said that last time.
I agree with you. I'm not kidding. That I can't believe that they haven't. Well, there's certainly a target on your back. There's certainly one on mine. And I'm not half as damaging as you are to these people.
Here's something brand new. A week ago, the data that flows into America's Digital Shield, where the numbers keep changing. By the way, you should scroll down a bit and start to look at those images that are going to young children because they'll blow your mind. But the point is, all the data stopped flowing into America's Digital Shield, which is flowing in from thousands of computers around the country, and it works beautifully. And all of a sudden, all the data stopped flowing. There were just like blanks all over the page. So I made some calls. My son, one of my sons who works for me and does tech work for me, he jumps in his car. He's going to run into this secret office we have to try to diagnose the problem. And he makes it halfway there and he gets broadsided by a hit and run driver. This was at night. So he didn't make it to the office to diagnose the problem. But we have all kinds of crazy things happening like to our team all the time and some terrible things. But the point is that we're collecting the data, and that's the key, because how do you stop them is you make them accountable. How do you stop them? You actually collect the evidence. In other words, is it legal for them? Was it legal for them in Florida to be sending out go vote reminders all day on their homepage just to liberals or mainly to liberals? No, that's actually illegal.
Wow. But you need someone to enforce that, right? And
you need the evidence. Before you can enforce it, you have to collect. And how can you collect it? Because it's all ephemeral.
Right.
And that's what they count on. They never, ever thought anyone or any group would ever be able to capture all of this data especially on a massive scale like we're doing. We're even, where we're even preserving, when you start to type a search term and they flash search suggestions at you.
Yes.
Look at how brief those are. We're collecting tens of millions of those. We're collecting all kinds of stuff that they use to manipulate. And those search suggestions, we know from our experimental research, if you fiddle with those search suggestions as they do in our research, we can turn a 50-50 split among undecided voters into a 90-10 split with no one having the slightest idea they've been manipulated.
No kidding. Wow. So what's been your experience with, do you think we need more legislation, or what could we do to what could we do? What's a good way to counter this besides just you collecting the data?
Legislation. I just had to send a few minutes before this. Got on your show. I just had to send a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee because after I testified, Senator Klobuchar, who's a Democrat and who's generally speaking a pretty reasonable person, she said that my research team is violating people's privacy because we're looking over people's shoulders to see what's on their screen. Now, somehow she missed the fact that I said right after that, just like the Nielsen company does with its television viewers. I mean, our people are volunteers, and when we send their data to our computers, we leave out any identifying information. We go to great lengths to preserve people's privacy. And she undermined my whole presentation by saying that our monitoring system violates people's privacy. The Congress is not going to help us with this problem.
Oh, no,
the Democrats are in their pocket, and Republicans hate regulation. They're not going to help us. So
can you go to full screen, Andrew, on the other computer? So according to your website here, you claim that these elections actually were flipped by Google, and you say that the 2021 was a flip. Now, I'm not allowed to say that on this channel, so of course it wasn't. This is just a crazy accusation that you're making.
Yeah.
And you say that the 2021, without Google's manipulation, Donald Trump would have got 311 to 325 electoral votes, and he would have been president. You also say the 2022 Arizona governor race was influenced by Google, and that Kerry Lake would have won that one. You also say the 2022 Georgia Senate race, where Raphael Warnock won, you said that it would have went to Herschel Walker. You also say the 2022 Wisconsin Senate race, Tony Evers is the winner. You say it would have went to Tim Mikas, whatever his name is. And then in the 2022 U.S. Senate, just in general, the Democrats have a 2-seat majority. It would be a 2 to 8 seat majority for the Republicans if without the Google manipulation. Also, the U.S. House of Representatives, the Republicans, well, they do have a 10-seat majority, but without the manipulation, they would have, according to you, a 27 to 59-seat majority. How could you? So you could. Now you're sure of those numbers, is what you're saying?
The lower value is, in every case, is rock solid. The upper value is a little bit more tenuous, but the lower value is absolutely rock solid. We've gotten better and better. We've been doing this for more than 11 years. We've gotten better and better at figuring out what's going on and at measuring very precisely what's going on. And we know what happens when Google is involved, and we know how to factor out their influence. And their influence is unbelievable. And they know it, and they're very proud of it, and they think they're doing good for humanity, and maybe they are. I don't want to argue that point. I just don't like a private company having that power, and I don't like them undermining our democracy and turning the free and fair election into just a farce.
So, well, I really hope I don't get in trouble for having you on. And Russ, you have a question. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, you mentioned that you have at the bottom of your site things that are being targeted at children. So we've seen a lot of this with, I assume you're referring to a lot of inappropriate sexual content directed at children.
I was looking at it. It didn't look like all set. It looked kind of just weird. It looked like that Spider-Man and Elsa thing from way back. That weird algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you keep watching, you'll see sexual content. You're seeing real content.
Well, we know. I mean, there are a lot of these just very bizarre battles. That 10 years ago, I think if you suggested to somebody that you wanted to expose their children to some of this stuff, the same people defending it now would have punched you in the mouth. So there's clearly been a kind of reconditioning of what people accept, what they think is appropriate. You see also this very, bizarre, healthy at any size, and we have one fat influencer after another dropping dead. So it seems like these algorithms are trying to normalize these very bizarre ideas. Would you say that that's true? And do you have any insights into who's directing that and what the purpose of that is?
In my opinion, there is absolutely no question that there is a process of social engineering going on here, in which a lot of it is exactly what you called it, is normalization. Now, normalization of what? Well, some of it's kind of obvious. Normalization of alternative sexual practices, and normalization of alternative gender language, and some of it is not really hidden. But what we're seeing now that we're actually collecting the data, we're seeing that a lot of what's occurring, a lot of the social engineering that's occurring, we don't understand. We don't know what the heck they're doing, and that's in a way the biggest problem of all, is that they're so secretive that we don't know who's making those decisions. We don't know what they're really trying to do, especially with children. But there's no question they're being extremely aggressive with kids. And we are capturing the evidence. Even though we don't really understand it very well, we're capturing it. And that one of the big advantages there is, as long as you capture it, you can go back in time and figure things out. You can get multiple experts working on it, and all kinds of people with all kinds of agendas looking at. But if you don't capture it, if you imagine not capturing any of this information, then you have no idea what's going on. You don't know why there was no red wave. You don't know why such and such a person won the election. You don't know what's going on in the heads of our kids.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it just looks like the world is nuts, and you don't get it.
So I think, first of all, maybe this would explain my urge to put on a Dolly Parton wig and a dress and go read to children at libraries. So I didn't know where that came from.
That's what we did after the steakhouse last night.
That's what we did.
I didn't think you were going to mention that.
But also, you would think that the Republicans would be jumping up and down about this and writing, even though they're averse to regulation, they would certainly want a regulation for self-preservation. But I think probably the reason why that isn't happening is because the donor class, which is who they serve, just like the Democrats, it's the same handful of donors that run the Democrats and run the Republicans, and they don't want them to have any regulation to stop this. And so so would you agree that's probably a logical thesis of mine?
There, I'm not sure, because we've gotten. Well, we get thousands of small gifts all the time. I think in the last few weeks, we've gotten $40,000 in small donations, which is, by the way, not enough to keep a monitoring system going.
Right.
That screen you're looking at, that's a $3 million screen. That's how much it costs. It took us a year and $3 million to build that nationwide system. But we get a lot of small gifts from people, which is wonderful. But now and then we get a big gift, and all I can say is I'm very confused about who's stepping up and really helping to build this. I think sometimes people they get it and they don't want to talk about it, but they're willing to support it behind the scenes.
And those big gifts are coming from me. And I don't want to out my cover, but there it is.
Now I know, because in fact a lot of money that's come in has come in anonymously through charitable giving departments of big New York banks. So
really,
yep.
I don't know. You would think like someone who's like an Elon Musk type, who's kind of his big thing is free speech. And so whether it's Elon Musk or not, but someone like that is what you're referring to, who would be a big donor. And those people have to exist. I know that even though most of the billionaires are, nefarious, you don't get to become a billionaire by helping people. Let's be honest, right? You get to become a billionaire by crushing people and stealing stuff, just like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and the rest of them. But not Mark Cuban, right? Come on. Anyway,
he's the good billionaire.
He's a good billionaire. So, I will. So tell me the website again so I can alert people to go to it. And if people want to donate, where can they donate?
Well, the website, the one you've been showing little glimpses of, is americasdigitalshield.com. And we're very, very proud of it. It took a tremendous crew of people, almost 50 people, a full year, $3 million in donations, and it works. Now we have to scale it up so that we have court admissible data in all 50 states. And so we can really stop these companies, and we have to make it permanent. So if people want to help, well, number one, they could sponsor one of our watchdogs, these people who let us look over their shoulders. So if you want to feed a watchdog, go to feedthewatchdog.org, and sign up. And for $25 a month, you can actually sponsor one of those people. That's all we pay them. We just pay them $25 a month, and in return, they're doing something wonderful for us. And by the way, they're politically balanced. We're very careful about that. If you want more information, or you want to, you have big money, or you know Elon personally, then go to mygoogle.research.com, mygoogle.research.com, and then there's links to tons and tons of stuff, our scientific work, all kinds of interviews I've done. And there's links to, if you're in a position to help with major gifts. And we get those all the time too. I just opened an envelope. There was a $25,000 check in it from people I've never heard of in my life. So there are some people who get this. And again, if you're kind of thinking about it, and think what happens if we don't have a system like this in place. Just think about that, which is like normal. That's normal. There is no system in place, and we have no idea what's going on. Okay, now we have an alternative. We have a system that's collecting the data, and this system will push these companies away from our kids and away from our elections.
Well, I certainly noticed how they manipulate the search engine, right? So if I was trying to find a study by the Cleveland Clinic about boosters, and that study is not favorable to the big pharma, and I couldn't find it. I kept finding all these articles that debunked the Cleveland Clinic study, but I couldn't find articles that told you what actually was in the Cleveland Clinic study. And I knew exactly what was going on, that they were manipulating the search engine results. And I could probably find that, but it would be on the 27th page of the search. So
and we're capturing that evidence, and we're measuring that bias. Okay, and we're doing it 24 hours a day, and our numbers are getting bigger. We're past 70 million already, and we're there. We're there looking very, very carefully and preserving the evidence. Now let me just tell you that I mentioned at one point the senators sent a threatening letter to the CEO of Google, and I mentioned they turned off the partisan go vote reminders, which wow, that was amazing. They also turned off the political bias on the Google search engine, which I thought was impossible. It literally went from a big negative number, which means strongly liberal, to 0. I thought that was impossible. And then I talked to one of the Google whistleblowers. He was a software engineer there for more than 8 years. And he said, yeah, he said they can turn the bias on and off, and I quote, like flipping a light switch. And then he showed me a manual. I can get you the manual if you want.
I would love it.
He showed me a manual from inside Google that is for their Twiddler system. And guess what their Twiddler system is? It's a system for manipulating bias on search engines.
Holy cow. And they call that Twiddler?
Twiddler, that's their Twiddler system. That's their internal name for it.
Okay.
I have the manual.
I really, honest to God, I can't believe you're alive. And it's not a joke, actually. This is really what you're doing is you are messing with the global forces of power, and in the most unbelievable way. I mean, look what they're doing to the people who showed up to January 6th to protest that election that you say Google had a hand in, and would have went the other way if Google didn't exert their bias. And those people felt that, so they went and protested. They're putting those people in jail for 20 years, 30 years. They're ruthless what they're doing, and they all pretend that that those people showed up to overthrow the government, and of course they didn't, because they were a bunch of Second Amendment gun nuts, and they showed up to the Capitol, and none of them brought their guns. And if you're going to overthrow the government, you think the first thing you do is you'd be packing some heat and you bring some guns, but they didn't. So that's how, but that's the narrative that Google pushes. That's the narrative that the mainstream media pushes. And is there anybody in the mainstream media that is interested in your story?
Oh, they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I used to write for all the big places, U.S. News and World Report, Time Magazine, et cetera, et cetera. Even Dissent, I published in Dissent. I mean, I've been everywhere. I used to be editor-in-chief of Psychology Today. And then, after I testified before Congress in 2019, and Ted Cruz was in charge of that hearing, and he was very, very, welcoming of my messaging, obviously. Very welcoming. He then invited me to a 4-hour private dinner, and we talked tech for 4 hours. I mean, the guy's he's really something.
Did you get invited on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein? No.
Thank God. And thank God, by the way, he's Epstein and I'm Epstein.
Yes.
That's very important. The point is, the next thing that happens is Trump, after I testified, Trump tweeted about my testimony, obviously, because I was saying the election was rigged. This is 2019. I'm talking about the 2016. Anyway, the point is, then, okay, so Trump didn't get his tweet quite right. Who cares? Doesn't matter. I could have lived through that. But then Hillary Clinton replied to his tweet and said that my work had been completely debunked and that it was based on data from 21 undecided voters. And then, boom, this machine starts running. I'd heard about it. New York Times, 100 mainstream publications. My reputation, which had been flawless as a researcher for 40 years, completely destroyed.
Yeah, that's
And now these
how
people
they
won't talk to me.
Yeah, that's how they do it. It's character assassination, and then they make it seem like you're some kind of a fringe kook, which is what they did with all the people who had a counter narrative to COVID, like Dr. Robert Malone and McCullough and Pierre Corey. These are leaders in their field, the most cited people, the people who are the most well respected, and they made them all seem like they were crazy kooks. And just like they made ivermectin seem like it was not a human medicine, even though it's on the WHO list of essential medicines and it won the Nobel Prize for human medicine, they got most of the people in the country to think that that was some only used for horses. It was a veterinary medicine. And I try to remind people that, 80% of antibiotics are used on farms. That doesn't make penicillin a cow medicine, right? But they got people to think that, and that's the power of propaganda. I mean, this is Brave New World. And George Orwell, it seems to be on steroids, like worse than we could have ever imagined, and we're living in it. And so that's why it's funny to me when I have people come on my show, like for instance Cornel West, and he tries to pretend that we have to worry about fascism coming to America through the election of Donald Trump. And I had to disabuse him of that stupid idea that you've been living in fascism for at least since COVID started. I mean, the real overpowering fascism, and it just didn't bother you because he lives in a ivory tower and he's not in the working class, and so he didn't care about any of that stuff that happened. And he's pretending to not see it, and he's still pretending that fascism is something off in the future in America. And no, you're living in it. It came, and you turned a blind eye to it. So this idea to try to scare people about fascism, you're not scared of it because you're living in it, and you're not blowing the whistle about it at all. I'm talking about people like him. There's lots. I just use him as one example because he came on my show, and I was personally offended by all the garbage he spewed on my show.
Let me tell you something sad, and that is that my team is the only one in the world that does this research. That really bothered Joe Rogan. That really bugged him because he thought lots of people should be studying this, and lots of people should be fighting this. And
I don't want to get
there is nobody, because they're either scared of Google or they are owned by Google.
The Google is the richest company in the history of humankind, and so people need to realize that. And they're not doing the bidding of the workers. They're not doing the bidding of regular people. They're in business to do the bidding of the most powerful entities and power centers in the world, right? And that would be the Bilderbergs, that would be the WEF, that would be the handful of billionaires that control the whole global economy. And I'm always reminded of that scene in that movie Network from 1974 with Ned Beatty, and he gives that famous speech where he said there are no countries anymore, there are only companies and the international transfer of dollars. And he says to him, you have upset that balance and you will atone. And so that's why I'm sure, I can't believe that you haven't gotten that speech yet, or if someone hasn't visited you personally. And the fact that you're still alive is amazing. And do you have a food taster?
Well, when I did a private briefing for a bunch of AGs at Stanford University, in fact, Ken Paxton was the head of the group then. He's the big dude, the big guy from Texas. He has 800 lawyers in his department. And I gave them my whole spiel, and I scared the crap out of them, and I went out in the hall, and then one of the AGs came out into the hall. I know exactly who it was. He's still an AG. And he said, Dr. Epstein, I don't mean to really, scare you. He said, but based on what you've told us, this was summer of 2019, that same summer that I testified for the first time. Based on what you've said, he said, I think you're going to be killed in some sort of accident in the next few months. And then he walked away. And of course, I wasn't killed, but my wife was.
Right. I remember you sharing that. It's a very sad story. And I remember you saying you're still not over it.
That's right.
Yeah. So, well, that's a tough thing to get over. I don't think you ever get over something like that. But, have you been on Joe Rogan's show?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, but yeah, I was on a show.
Okay. Well, Maybe he's one of those big donors. Who knows? I bet he is. I bet he's one of those guys who cares.
Well, he gave me a cell phone number.
Okay.
It's more than you've done.
Yeah. Well, I care about my life, but hey, my phone got tapped. So my phone and computer got tapped into by what my IT guy said was the Mossad. That they used a thing that only the Mossad has, and he said it was definitely a nation state, if not the Mossad, and they got into my iCloud account, and he said, Jimmy, I couldn't even do that. So this is a guy who's my IT guy who gets hired by countries to try to hack into their computer networks to try to find vulnerabilities. He's ex-military intelligence, all that stuff, and he's the one who told me this. And so I gave a speech at the UN about the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline, and I'm sure that didn't help. And so I'm with you. I'm looking over my shoulder all the time, and I've been invited to let's say famous places of influence, and so that's the carrot and stick that they're using with me, right? So they're trying to scare me, and they're trying to entice me to join them. And that's actually happening. The MK Ultra is a real thing. The WEF is a real thing. And well, listen, we have to. Speaking of that, we have to switch now, and we're going to go take our live stream to go to Rumble, right? So we're going to do the rest of our show on Rumble. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, or is there anything you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
Go to americasdigitalshield.com. Go to feed the watchdog.org. I think it is feedthewatchdog.org, and sponsor one of our field agents, because that would help us a lot. It's very, very expensive to carry that many people. It's about $300,000 a month. So we need tens of thousands of Americans to step up and sponsor these people. They're doing us all a great service by letting us, capture that content that's coming into their computers.
Okay, Dr. Robert Epstein, continued health and safety, and thanks for doing the work you're doing. And if there's any way I could help you without giving you my personal cell phone, please let me know.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Anytime you want me, you got me.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Come see us do a live stand-up show. We'll be in Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, and we're going to Europe. Do you live in Europe? We're going to be there. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.